Hey everyone, and welcome. You have definitely seen this effect everywhere, that gorgeous frosted glass look that makes UI elements seem like they're just floating in space. It's called glassmorphism, and it is easily one of the hottest trends in design. So today, we're going to crack the code and I'll show you exactly how to build it, step by step. And this is what we're going for. Look at that. A sleek, semi-transparent card that beautifully blurs the background, catches these subtle highlights. It just feels so modern and clean. Now, I know it looks pretty complex, but I promise by the end of this, you are going to have all the tools you need to create this yourself. So, how do we get this stunning effect? Well, it's not just one single magic trick. It's actually a careful combination of 5 key ingredients. We're going to deconstruct this whole thing piece by piece so you don't just understand how to do it, but why each step works. All right, let's kick things off by decoding this effect. We're going to break it down into 5 fundamental parts. You can think of these as your official designer's toolkit for creating anything with glassmorphism. Here they are, the 5 core techniques we're going to master. We've got strokes, which give our card those crisp, defined edges, then shadows to literally lift it off the page, of course blurs, which create that signature frosted look, gradients for adding subtle color and light, and finally a little touch of texture for that last bit of realism. So we're going to start with the basics, the things that give our object its physical presence, strokes and shadows. You know, getting these right is the absolute foundation for a believable effect. They define the shape and make it feel like it's actually sitting right there in the scene. First up, let's talk strokes. You've got a couple of options, but the 2 main ones are inside and outside. Now, an outside stroke actually adds to the total size of your object, which, well, it can really throw off your carefully planned layouts. That's why for UI design, an inside stroke is almost always the way to go. It keeps your shape's dimensions exactly the way you set them. No surprises. And hey, you're not just limited to a plain old solid line. By digging into the advanced options, you can play with dash and gap values to create all sorts of custom dash strokes. It's a really simple way to give your designs a more detailed and, frankly, a more unique look. Next up, drop shadows. These are absolutely crucial for creating that sense of depth. By tweaking the X and Y axis, you're basically deciding where your light source is. The blur value softens the edges for a natural look, while spread and opacity control how big and intense it is. Mastering these 5 properties is what really sells the illusion that your object is floating. Okay, now for the star of the show, the blur. This is the single most important element for creating that glass illusion. But, and this is a big but, there is a super common mistake here that can completely ruin the entire effect if you're not careful. A pretty logical first thought might be, okay, I'll just take my background image and slap a blur filter on it, right? Seems simple enough. But this approach leads to a major problem, especially once you start adding things like text on top of your glass pane. And here is the difference in action. If you blur the entire background, any text on top of it just becomes this unreadable mess. The pro move is to create a totally separate shape, place it above your background, and apply a background blur effect to that shape only. This lets you keep your text layer perfectly crisp while still getting that beautiful blur behind it. So let this sink in because it's the most important takeaway. Your blur effect lives on a separate layer. It's not on the background, it's not on the text. This simple separation is what makes the whole thing work, keeping your design both beautiful and functional. Honestly, it's the one trick that instantly elevates the whole design. All right, we've decoded all the individual pieces. Now it's time for the fun part, putting it all together. Let's walk through the exact blueprint for building our stunning glassmorphism card right from scratch. Here's the 5-step process. Step 1, create a colorful background. The effect looks way better when there are vibrant colors to blur. Step 2, create your main rectangle and give it a white linear gradient fill. We'll set the top to about 40% opacity and the bottom to 10% to get that subtle sheen of light. Step 3, apply that all-important background blur. A value around 40 is a great place to start. Step 4, add a really subtle inside stroke. Maybe even use a gradient to define that polished edge. And finally, step 5, add a soft drop shadow to make the whole thing pop. And here's one last little detail that makes a huge difference. For any text you put on the card, change its layer blending mode to overlay. This lets the text kind of soak up and interact with the blurred colors behind it, and it integrates it into the design in this really beautiful, subtle way. So, you've built your design and it looks fantastic, but we're not quite done. Let's just quickly cover 2 final pro tips that'll help you polish your work and make sure it looks just as good when you share it with the rest of the world. When you go to export your final image, really pay attention to that quality setting. Exporting at 1x is fine for drafts, but for a final portfolio piece, you're going to want to use 2x or even 3x. This creates a much higher resolution file that's going to look incredibly sharp and professional, especially on those high-density screens. And for one last, final touch of realism, think about adding a noise layer. This is just a faint, grainy texture you apply over your whole design. What it does is it breaks up those perfectly smooth digital colors and gradients, and it adds this subtle, tangible quality that just makes the glass effect feel even more convincing. And there you have it. The code is officially cracked. From strokes and shadows to the big secret of background blurs, you now have the complete blueprint for creating beautiful glassmorphism effects. You have the tools, you have the techniques. So the only question left is, what will you create?